Okay, good morning, everybody. So, welcome back to another book review. What if the last biologist on Earth was a robot reverse engineering life? What if the ocean filed a witness statement against us? And what if an AI had to feel pain to save strangers? So, today I'm reviewing Kim Bo-young's On the Origin of Species and Other Stories, alongside two of her short stories which you can find online. The first one is called Whale Snows Down, and the second one is called How Alike Are We? And these stories together give us three angles on creation, extinction, and embodiment. So these are very big questions, and that's why these stories still read like headlines from the near future. So hello everyone, I'm Barry, and this is Seoul Book Club. I'm sorry, I just woke up. But yeah, so first of all, I will start with the short story collection called On the Origin of Species and Other Stories. And this is a collection by celebrated and much loved sci-fi author Kim Bo-young. And the English translation was published in 2021. And the stories in this English collection, they were actually taken from two separate Korean collections, and both of those collections were published in 2010. The one collection was called An Evolutionary Myth, and the other collection was called Boundless Stories. And I believe some of the stories in those collections still haven't been translated into English. So hopefully we see those untranslated stories sometime. But most of the stories in this volume were translated by Ewha University professor Sora Kim-Russell. We've obviously reviewed lots of her translations on the channel before, but there's several other translators whose work is featured here, and they include Eunhae Cho, Melissa Meili Chan, Jihyun Park, and Gord Sellar. So Kim is one of the most talented Korean sci-fi writers, and just one of the most talented Korean writers in general, maybe. And she debuted with a novella called The Experience of Touch, and that won the award for best novella at the Korean Science and Technology Creative Writing Award in 2004. And then in 2013, she published her debut novel that's called The Seven Executioners, and that won the South Korean Sci-Fi Award. That hasn't been translated into English yet. But anyway, her work is very popular here in Korea, and she's been celebrated by film directors like Park Chan-wook and Bong Joon-ho, and she was actually an advisor on the Bong Joon-ho film Snowpiercer. And Bong said about her, you'll see this quote often as part of the blurb on her books, but he said that her fiction is a breathtaking piece of cinematic art itself. So Bong Joon-ho is a big fan. And this was Kim's second collection of stories, which was published in 2021. So far, Kim only has two books of short stories published in English. They were both published in 2021. There haven't been any of her novels translated yet. And then there's a few other short stories translated that you can find in different places online. I reviewed the other collection of short stories I called I'm Waiting for You a few days ago. So you can find that on the channel. And I said that collection was a remarkable work of science fiction that traveled the universe and asked profound questions about human nature. I really am a big fan of that collection of four stories. So is Kim asking the same types of questions here? And do these new translations live up to the general hype surrounding Kim Bo-young? And the answer is a very emphatic yes to both of these questions. So we certainly do again see Kim asking these very clever, insightful, and moving questions about human nature, our experience of consciousness, and the nature of reality. You'll find there are musings on AI, life on different planets, Earth after the singularity, time travel, evolution, myth, fantasy, and virtual worlds. And it reminded me a little bit of a couple of stories from Bora Chong's Curse Bunny collection. It also reminded me of Ted Chiang's sci-fi short stories. And one of them in particular is very Ted Chiang-ish. Still, Kim has a very distinctive voice, and each of these stories is packed full of genuinely thought provoking ideas and concepts. So, let me give you an example. Let me break down one of the stories. So, the first story, and maybe my favorite story, it's a fantastic story. First story is called Scriptor. And you may remember that around 2021, when this collection was getting published in English, remember this was during the big global event, but around that time, there was a lot of talk about the metaverse and even Facebook changed their name to Metaverse, right, or Meta. But anyway, the metaverse. The idea was that the metaverse would be a place where we all live virtual digital lives separate from the real world. And the hype around the metaverse seems to have died down a little bit, and it's been supplanted in the media and popular consciousness by hype around AI chatbots, right? ChatGPT and Claude, what is it? Claude and Grok and all the rest of it. But nevertheless, there are already millions of people who spend thousands of hours playing games online and shared virtual spaces such as MMOs, right? Massively multiplayer online games. And Scripter is set inside a game such as this, but it's a very old game and it's beginning to break. Its code is beginning to break. It's sort of beginning to disintegrate. And the company that runs the game wants to close it down because it's so old. They don't want to keep maintaining the servers because nobody plays it anymore, or almost nobody plays it, because there's a problem. They're legally prevented from shutting it down because there is still one person playing this ancient game. So they send an employee into the game to persuade this person to leave. And they offer this player all sorts of incredible benefits: a lifetime free pass to the newest, most advanced game with the best technology and the most immersive experience. However, the player refuses, and the company employee can't understand why. Why would you possibly turn down this incredible offer to get this sort of access, this sort of elite access to the best, newest environment that you could be in? And it seems like the player is in love with one of the game characters who is essentially a program. And again, the employee in the company, they can't understand why. And I don't want to spoil the end of the story. And that summary does not do justice to how gripping this story is. And here we find Kim asking, what is reality? What does it mean to be sentient? Can we live fulfilling lives in virtual worlds? Can you love a computer program? And all of these questions are framed in this story. It's set in this incredibly compellingly realized virtual space. And it's a fantastic story. So, and it's asking all these huge questions about something that seems to be happening or is beginning to happen now in the world. And it's very enjoyable, just extremely pleasurable to sort of follow Kim as she contemplates these things in story form. Sorry, I just woke up and still quite tired. Anyway, so the title story is another fantastic story, and it's the most substantial story in the collection. It's almost a novella in length, and it also has a sequel story later in the collection. So, what are the themes or issues that Kim is tackling in these two stories? So, in the first story, we are presented with a vision of Earth that is far in the future. The world is completely populated by sentient robots of various kinds, various types. And it's a functioning society, and robots fill all of the different roles. There is no biological life left on the planet at all, and it's so far in the future that the robots they've lost all records of where they originally came from. They don't know who created them or how they got there. And they've also lost all records or understanding or awareness that biological life existed prior to their existence at all. However, there is a fringe academic who writes some papers to the effect that perhaps some kind of biological life is possible. He's regarded with disdain by the other professors who mock these ideas as being they're crazy, it's ridiculous, it's completely preposterous. How could it be possible? How could biological life exist? But he inspires a rogue group of scientists who start working on his ideas with ultimately, life-changing consequences. And these stories comment on so much: the arrogance of scientific knowledge, the dysfunctional nature of academia, the pitfalls of groupthink, and also, again, just what is life? What constitutes a living entity? And who has the right to declare if something is alive or conscious or not? And Kim asks us to contemplate our own creation of AI and robots, which we're doing right now here in Korea. Samsung are investing in these things heavily, and of course, other big companies are doing the same. And then Kim uses this to sort of reflect back on the wonder of our own biological existence. And there's a point in the second story where the robots, they create biological life, and we see the profound effect this has on the robots. And it's remarkable. You're seeing the creation of biological life from the point of view of a robot. And it's disturbing, and it's inspiring and thrilling and deeply troubling. And it's also quite amusing as well. Two incredible stories. So anyway, I'm going to move on from robots rediscovering biology to fish cataloging our debris. So again, this is Kim Bo-young using a different kind of witness to observe humanity. So we're kind of flipping the microscope, and we'll see the sea creatures render their verdict on us. So yeah, this story is called Whale Snows Down, and it was published in 2021. 2021 was a good year for Kim Bo-young translations, and you can find this story in the Future Science Fiction Digest. This story was translated by Sophie Bowman. So, of course, Kim is very active in the Korean sci-fi community. She's inspired an entire generation of up-and-coming Korean science fiction writers. And her work encompasses a lot of interesting themes and topics, including, like we've seen, the development of AI, environmental destruction, virtual reality, humanity's relationship with technology in general. And many of the stories are these mind-bending exercises in storytelling and world building, and exhibit a truly curious and inquisitive writer with an impressive imagination. And this story is another great example of her work. Whale Snows Down is a story with a strong environmental message, and it depicts man-made environmental catastrophes from the perspective of ocean-dwelling creatures. Okay, so Kim is well known for these sort of environmental message works. Several of her stories depict these dystopian futures set after some kind of ecological disaster has altered life on the planet. And I just talked about one of her most famous stories on the origin of species, and that depicts a world in which humans have become extinct after ruining the world's atmosphere. And so Kim is kind of working in a similar vein in Whale Snows Down. So what is the situation in this story? So originally reviewed this back in, I think, in 2021, and and the reason that at the time it was interesting because it came out around the time of the success of the film Avatar 2, the James Cameron film, and which I believe is the most successful film ever made, which seems crazy, but there you go. And that film has a strong environmental message and theme. And in particular, the message of that film is to do with the damage that is done to the seas and oceans by human activity, or, it's on an alien planet, but that's basically the what they're talking about. And the damage, especially, that's been done to the animals and fish that live in them. And I'm sure many people these days watch these documentaries, which are popular on streaming services, such as Chasing Ice, about the melting of the polar ice caps, or Chasing Coral, about the death of coral reefs, and or A Plastic Ocean, about the buildup of human debris and garbage in the oceans and seas around the world. And in Whale Nose Down, Kim is writing about how these tragedies play out from the perspective of the aquatic creatures that inhabit the seas. So, what we get in this story is a view of climate change and the ultimate destruction of the human race from the perspective of creatures whom we have negatively affected through our development of industries and the use of fuel. And as with many of Kim's stories, it presents a vivid world and strange and beguiling entities and a profound and sad message. So, how do these sea creatures interpret the self destructive behavior of the humans on the land above their ocean habitats? The story begins with a variety of sea creatures. Some of whom are these sort of very ancient deep sea dwelling creatures coming together to have a kind of assembly, a kind of meeting to discuss the strange events that have been going on up above. Like the most senior of these creatures are, from the deepest. These are creatures that live in the deepest regions of the oceans. And they're coming together because there is a strange, inedible substance kind of snowing down, as it were, into the oceans. And they're discussing what it is and where it has come from. And this substance is unnatural, and young, foolish fish and sea creatures die when they eat it because it's not digestible. So, what they wonder is happening in the world above. And the creatures share different information. So some say, "Oh, the ice is melted over here. The sea is hotter over there." Some of their young are dying in significant numbers. And of course, they come to the conclusion that this is a result of humans and perhaps even the extinction of the human race. And one of the creatures says, in the distant past, all kinds of gorgeous life had thrived above the surface, just like in this ocean, but that over the last 100 years or so, almost all of it had disappeared. And now only that bizarre species called humans teemed around up there. And as a result of human industry and waste, we have gone extinct in some kind of environmental catastrophe. And this is causing havoc on the seas with typhoons spreading wildly across the surface. And one of the oldest sea creatures concludes that the string of the world has snapped, and that perhaps the only safe place left to try and survive this man-made calamity is in the deepest reaches of the ocean. So the melting of the ice caps, the dying of the coral reefs, and the increase in extreme weather conditions such as typhoons are, of course, very common topics nowadays. Seems as if every other day almost there's another news story about some kind of a severe weather event related to climate change. And in writing about these types of disasters and calamities from the point of view of sentient sea creatures, message is Kim trying to share with readers? So, on the one hand, the message is very clear and simple. Through human greed, avarice, and industry, etc., humans have had a massive, reckless impact on the world's environment and ecological systems. The scale of this carelessness and neglect is disgusting and tragic. And what we've done to the other animals we share the world with and their habitats is cruel and evil. Is cruel and evil. And we should be ashamed that this is the path that we have taken. Sorry, what happened there? Is everything okay? I think so. Yeah, and we should be ashamed of this the damage that we've done to the natural environment. And Kim brings this idea to life very well. So through the eyes of these sea creatures, we see the poignancy and tragedy of what has occurred. We've neglected to think about these creatures and caused them perhaps irreparable harm. But there are perhaps some other messages here too. So the way the sea creatures and fish live is more of a community with respect for different types of creatures and different ways of living and existing. And these creatures exist in a kind of a balance, right? They all understand and appreciate this sort of network that they live in. There's a kind of harmony among them. And perhaps this way of life, Kim seems to suggest, is better than the models the humans have followed into the epic destruction of the planet's environment. Then again, she also suggests that perhaps the world would be better off without us. If the monsters that covered the ground are all gone, might the world not get a bit better now? One of the creatures asks. Ultimately, though, this is a morsel of a story compared to some of Kim's more celebrated pieces. And if I'm being completely honest, probably isn't quite top tier Kim Bo-young. However, it's still a good story with a compelling message and is well worth reading. Hold on one second. Okay, and so after the Ocean's indictment, the next witness is Machine. So, how alike are we? Forces an AI into a body and asks whether feeling pain changes what we owe each other. What do human and machine owe each other? So this is the final story I'm going to review today, and it's called "How Alike Are We?" It's translated by Jihyun Park and Gord Sellar. What is going on with my computer here? Come on. And this story was published in Clark's World Science Fiction and Fantasy magazine back in 2019. So, what is the story here? So, there is a kind of supply ship. It's a deep space supply ship. It made me think of something like the crew on the ship, name of which I'm forgetting, in the first Alien film, right? There are these sort of blue collar workers. They're on this kind of deep space supply mission, and they're diverted, just like an alien, to Titan by a sort of SOS signal that's been sent by a group of miners who are in a desperate situation. They're desperately in need of supply, and so the crew aren't used to dealing with this kind of thing. And the ship's crisis management AI called HUN, HUN, forces the crew to copy its mind into a human-like prosthetic body so it can investigate something it can't see. This is like a repeated refrain throughout the story. It says, "There's something I can't see." And it starts. This is how the story starts, by this AI saying, "There's something I can't see. I can't quite understand, like what is happening between these crew members." And because there's something that seems to be warping the behavior of the crew, and the AI can't seem to analyze, like, what is happening, what is going wrong here. However, when sort of inserted into this prosthetic body, the AI loses much of its memory and a big chunk of its processing power, and it experiences a kind of pain, a kind of sensory overload for the first time. And it sort of and as the story begins, it's kind of struggling to overcome this. But in this new prosthetic body, it witnesses the sort of the fraying morale of the crew, sort of up close, kind of face to face, as it were. So we have this very hard pressed captain who's sort of being beset from different sides by different groups. But he's still very much the captain, called Egan's captain, still very much wants to save this group of miners. We have a meticulous, sort of detail-oriented data officer, and then a hostile navigator who ultimately leads a mutiny against the captain and the AI. But they're having communication problems with the ship, and they have to figure out how to drop a supply box of essential supplies for these miners through the dense atmosphere. And it's a very complicated process and procedure. And the AI reasons that near the equator, there's a sort of windless dead zone. And so if they try and drop it through this windless area, this might be a workable method to make the delivery. And so they're planning to use a kind of emergency landing shuttle to deliver these essential emergency supplies. They've thought of various possibilities, like encasing it in ice to drop it through the atmosphere. Anyway, so eventually there's a violent standoff that ends with the the mutineer being being neutralized. And then this sort of window for assisting the miners, the window is kind of closing down, the clock is ticking. And then eventually the AI gets back into its original form, and it transfers into the shuttle, and then kind of begins a descent with these supplies. And it seems likely that this is an act of self-sacrifice. And at the same time, the captain recognizes a kind of human-machine kinship, and prepares to make the journey home. And so it's a story. There's a bunch of things going on here. There's sort of bureaucracy of hierarchical management, embodiment, and sort of how human and machine alikeness can be inspiring and limiting. But at its core, again, we see this meditation on consciousness, embodiment, and there's also a sort of uncanny, the sort of uncanny nature of AI, this AI being in the prosthetic body. So when the AI moves into this sort of human form, the crew becomes very uneasy. Their sort of anxiety around this AI kind of spikes, and it's kind of like there's a uncanny valley effect going on, right? So it's very similar to human, but obviously not human, and this seems to have a sort of stress the crew members out. And then the AI, through the story, the AI is hunting, trying to search for this thing that it can't see, right? And it's almost, for the AI, it's almost a technical problem, but there's something else going on there that I won't tell you about to spoil you. But it is about blind spots in what we notice, and how social systems, whether it's this group of people on the ship, the crew, or the corporation they work for, they don't produce the right messages or methods of communication, right? There's been a breakdown of communication. Of what we have here is a failure to communicate. And of course, when the AI, when it's forced into this body, it has to confront pain. And a big part of the story is this idea of gendered projection. What do the crew project onto this AI body? What isn't the AI seeing? There's also this very interesting part about the ambiguity of reading faces. Like the AI is sort of figuring out how to read the expressions on people's faces. Like, what does this mean? What does that mean? What's going on with this person's face? What are they telling me? And then again, it's sort of about personhood, right? Personhood is like contingent on external factors. It's not about a soul or an internal essence or something. And then you've got things in there about like the chain of command, with this mutiny, and and then all this sort of stuff about making these difficult difficult calculations, and what is worth the risk, what isn't worth the risk. And it's kind of in a very logistics driven setting. You have this big sort of freighter ship, and yeah, there's also this sort of stuff about just the corporate nature of the environment, and how these things kind of shape the human habits and shape the machine habits. Anyway, so there's a bunch of things going on here. It's about how are we alike enough, the AIs and the humans, to share responsibility or to extend care to each other, even if we can't really cleanly prove what we are, who's alive, who isn't alive. Anyway, so I don't think Kim has had any new translations published since 2021. If you know of any other Kim Bo-young stories that I haven't been able to find, so every now and again I search online to see if there's been a new one translated. So, but I don't think there has been. But if you do know of any, please do let me know. And so, the last one that was translated was Whale Snows Down in 2021. So I don't think we've had anything else in translation from Kim since 2021. But happily, however, I see that there is a novel called A Plagued Sea, which is apparently due to be published in August 2026, with a translation by Sophie Bowman. And the blurb describes it as follows. Just let me read you the short blurb here. So, from visionary author Kim Bo-young comes a gruesome look at prejudice, fear, and transformation, perfect for our socially isolated modern world. So, while waiting for a train to Haewon, an isolated Korean seaside village, bodyguard Moo Young gets a disaster alert on her phone. TVs throughout the station report breaking news of a massive earthquake on the eastern coast. Despite the danger, Muyong boards the train with the person she's bodyguarding. I think there's been a typo in the blur, but I think it means the person she's bodyguarding rather than face the earthquake and leave the girl in her mother's care. That choice haunts her for the rest of her life. 3 years later, Haewon village is home to horrors. The earthquake unleashed an ancient plague that transforms its victims into fishy monsters, and the government's lockdown has cut off any hope for help. Muyong's niece is dead, and all that's left for her is to hunt villagers who break isolation. When an officious bureaucrat from Seoul arrives in the village, he stirs up even deeper trouble. Will Muyong survive? Does she even deserve to? So, fishy monsters, bodyguards, and officious bureaucrats. Sounds pretty good to me. So, can't wait for that one to be published next year. And anyway, so overall, I think that Kim Bo Young's stories are just remarkable, and I think she's definitely some kind of genius. And if you're interested in how technology shapes our minds and changes humanity and where it will all go in the future, I don't think there's any better writer to read at the moment than Kim Bo Young. So if this helped you pick your next read, hit like and subscribe and ring the bell. And in the comments, just let me know if you've read these stories or if you have any recommendations for what I should cover next. I've got links for everything in the description. And thanks for watching. I'm sorry for the very sleepy review this morning. And I might try and do another one later today. So take care, everybody, and see you next time.